So all the talk right now in the world of FPV is about the brand new DJI Avata 2, and if you saw my last video then you probably know I was a tad disappointed that they decided to release a second version of the same drone rather than coming up with a mini sub 250 gram FPV drone that many wanted from DJI, including myself. Something like the sub 250 Dolly Fly, which is a drone that I reviewed in the last video. Anyway, tiny drones have been on my mind a lot lately, and Beta FPV must have been reading my mind as they sent me over their Pavo Pico to test, which at the time of making this video is the world's tiniest Cinewhoop able to carry a 4K camera, coming in at just 76 grams without the battery and 102 grams with battery. It's truly staggering. The thing that absolutely blows my mind with this Cinewhoop is that it holds the same camera as the original Mark 1 version of the DJI Avata. So in theory you can get the same high quality footage with something that looks like a little non-threatening fun toy compared to something that's 4 times its weight and 3 times its size like the DJI Avata. So surely this little guy is too good to be true. In this video I'm going to explore the capabilities of this tiny 100 gram beast, pros, cons, and if I'm going to be keeping mine or selling it on. And before we start, here's some key info you may wish to know if you're thinking about purchasing this drone. So when you get the box, included is everything you need minus the O3 Air unit, which you will need to purchase and install separately, but no worries, it's all screws and plugs, no soldering required, and super simple and quick to install. It does come shipped with 1 battery included, and the recommended battery size are these 450 milliamp hour 2S batteries that actually fit really nicely and snug in the 3D printed holder underneath, which is nice because, you know, no battery straps required. They've included a UV filter and a 3D printed camera mount that protrudes to avoid scratching the lens for head-on collisions. For the receiver, it comes stock with an ELRS receiver, but you can purchase with others, such as mine has a Crossfire to use with my Tango 2 radio, or you can just use it plain with the DJI RX, so you can use it with the DJI controller as well. You have the option to switch out the regular DJI O3 Air unit antenna with these tiny ones here to save some weight and also improve balance, which is highly recommended. Now, one thing I do like about what Beta FPV have done is that when they brought this drone out, they openly asked for help with beta testing of the drone to get it to fly as good as it possibly can. They sent the drone out to many pro pilots for advice and opinions on how they can make it fly as well as it possibly can. However, their first batch was not too well received as there was some issues with jello in the footage. The good news is Beta FPV have now fixed these issues with this second batch, which is one of the drones that I have. Now, for me personally, if I'm going to own a drone like this in my fleet of drones, I want to know 4 things. Firstly, will it allow me to fly indoors better compared to an Avata sized whoop or even a 250 gram Cinewhoop? Secondly, is the noise level of this Cinewhoop lower than all the others, allowing me to fly discreetly in busier areas and at busier times of the day without being bothered by the so-called Karens of this world?
Karens that will ruin your day.
Sorry if your name's Karen, by the way. I feel like you guys get a bit of a bad rep. Also, can I hit tiny unimaginable gaps with this thing that I would not risk with my bigger Cinewhoops? And lastly, I already know that this drone will be rubbish in windy conditions, but I do want to test to know the level of wind that it is able to handle. So will it allow me to fly indoors better compared to an Avata sized whoop or even a 250 gram Cinewhoop? I do need to preface this by saying if you're an amazing pilot with a lot of experience of flying indoors, you can be comfortable flying just about anything in people's homes. For example, Mr. Steele, one of the world's best pilots, flying an unducted 5-inch drone through a $1 million home, which for me, plain and simple, that just make me shit my pants. And even flying bigger whoops, such as these 4S drones, do make me a tad nervous in the beginning. So doing a fly-through tour of a property with something like the Pavo Pico, I feel is perfect for my sanity because you just know if it hits anything, it just bumps off rather than leaving any dents. I actually flew this through a friend's house earlier this week and felt super chilled and comfortable, and as a result got some nice footage through the house without feeling too stressed out in any way. It usually takes me a couple of batteries to get my nerves in order, especially if I'm flying indoors, but with the Pavo Pico, just because I know about the size and the weight of it, I was just calm straight off from the first battery and was able to get good footage pretty much from the first battery. One thing that is annoying compared to an Avata that flies for 14 minutes on one battery, or even a sub $250 dolly fly that flies for 6.5 minutes on a battery, is the flight time. It's about 3 minutes 30 seconds, maybe 4 at a push, but then you're pushing the battery voltage very low, and that is with the recommended 450 milliamp hour batteries, which for some longer fly-through tours could be an issue. Is the noise level of this Cinewhoop lower than all the others, allowing me to fly discreetly in busier times of the day and in busier areas? As we all know, Cinewhoops are loud, and the Avata first version absolutely takes the cake on probably being the loudest, screechiest Cinewhoop ever. All right, so here is the Avata noise level takeoff and hover. All right, and here's just me just flying it around in close proximity. The Avata 2 thankfully has addressed this with a bit more of a lower pitch, but I feel like that's at cost to its durability. But that's Avata 2 review whenever it happens, maybe here on this channel at some point. As FPV pilots, we all know that fear of the Karens of this world coming up to us.
Karens that will ruin your day.
As we are getting some innocent shots at our local park and absolutely laying down the laws of which they have no clue or understanding. So me personally, in order to not have to deal with this battle every single time, I'd rather just go out and fly something that nobody bats an eyelid, even if they see or hear. The sub $250 dolly flyer tested in my last video is a significant improvement when it comes to noise levels compared to the DJI Avata, and I'm pleased to say the Pavo Pico is even better. All right, now here's the Pavo Pico flying close in vicinity around me. I'm comfortably losing the sound completely, just 50 to 100 yards or so away, especially when I'm just cruising, which you're only really going to do with this drone anyway. I can't really see me doing any freestyle with it. This for me allows more capabilities for quick, stealthy, guerrilla style shots in areas that you'd be more nervous using a bigger, louder Cinewhoop. And at the end of the day, if a Karen did want to come and have a word about me flying this little thing, I think you just have to have a look at this drone, use your common sense, and realize that it looks more of a toy that I would buy for my son's birthday than a pro drone catching 4K footage. Can I hit tiny, unimaginable size gaps with this thing that I would not risk with bigger Cinewhoops? Having a drone this small means this has to be one of the reasons I'd use it. To get those shots where people are just like, what? Did he actually just fly through that? If in theory, if you look at the size, you'd think, yeah, this thing will fit through anything. But with FPV, it's not quite as simple as that, especially flying outdoors. I found that with it being such a small and lightweight thing, that it has the tendency to sway from side to side, even in like almost zero winds, when you're approaching smaller gaps. And I think it's because it has less authority in the air due to its size. So I'm finding it harder to fully commit to the tiny gaps. One way I have been able to try and get better, improve at this, is trying to have that little bit more speed that I maybe feel comfortable with, but I have to trust that having more authority, going through a tiny gap quicker, I'm more likely to be successful than if I approach it slowly and start to sway side to side. So yeah, this has helped me to remove that side to side swaying a lot more, as well as adding some expo in the rates tab. And if you do these and fully commit to those tiny gaps, I feel like the possibilities are limitless with this drone. So let's talk about the windy or breezy conditions, and herein lies the Pavo Pico's true weakness, which is windier, breezy conditions outside, as it just gets blown around like it's nothing all over the place. And it also makes it trickier to fly as you have less battery life, especially if you're flying against the wind. As I said in the beginning with this point, obviously that is to be expected with something this small and light, and it's manageable to fly in light winds, don't get me wrong, maybe up to about 15 miles per hour, 17, something like that. But I wouldn't push it beyond that because you feel like you're not totally in control when you're flying with winds higher than that. Now let's have a word on a couple of other things. So durability, this quad, as you can imagine, will not be up there with like an Avata when it comes to durability, as the ducts are made of thin light plastic. It looks as if it could only take some minor knocks rather than a full blown crash. I have knocked this thing around a lot, flying indoors, flying outdoors, bumps, scratches, not from crazy high, because you shouldn't be flying these kind of drones crazy high anyway, it's pointless. But yeah, just from certain bumps and scrapes here and there, the ducks have held up well and I haven't broken them thus far. All right, spoke too soon, guys. I have just cracked it here, the ducts. And it was a crash from like a little bit of a height, to be fair, so I mean, but if you did break them, they are really cheap to replace. Beta FPV sell replacements in amongst other things that you might want to replace with this drone. So yeah, you could just buy yourself a few cheap spares and you're fine. If you made it this far into the video, you might be interested in the price of the Pavo Pico. At this point is an interesting discussion, as without the air unit, it's priced at $104, which, you know, pretty cheap. But of course, the air unit coming in at, here in the UK, £210 means total $350-ish once you package the both together. For something that's quite a niche drone, might seem quite a lot. When you take into consideration, you can now probably get the first generation Avata for the same price, or for about an extra 100. You can get probably an Avata 2. Drone only, I'm talking. However, I think Beta FPV have made this drone with the frame and board only, for the very reason that you can buy it cheap and then swap in an existing O3 air unit you may have on another quad to use when you may need the Pavo Pico, therefore allowing you to essentially have two drones, but not necessarily needing two expensive O3 air units. That is exactly what I did to this drone. I didn't buy another O3 air unit. I took one out of my 5-inch quad and just plugged it into this Pavo Pico. And yeah, it kind of felt like I have two drones, like I said, with one O3 air unit. That is, of course, me looking at the glass half full, so take it however you want. Overall, I really do love this little thing. It does have its flaws, as I mentioned, but for a 100-gram drone that shoots the same quality footage as a DJI Avata Mark 1, I really can't complain. I'll definitely be keeping mine to use for those occasions when I need to pack super light but want to have an FPV drone with me, or when I need to get those shots through tiny gaps, or those indoor shots but in smaller, tighter spaces. And guys, if you did want to know how to fly cinematic FPV as well as you possibly can, go and check this video out, which has a whole load of amazing tips that only the professional pilots in this industry know. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.